us to me, for I am Doom.
Be honest with me for a second. Think of the most arrogant person you've ever met. You know how you wait for the universe to humble them? That's the story we've been told since forever, right? That the overconfident villain eventually gets outsmarted because his own ego trips him up. So here's what I thought going into this. Dr. Doom is one of the most arrogant characters ever put on a page. Which means, by the rules we all know, his ego should be the thing that destroys him. But here's the problem. It isn't. It's the opposite. And once you see why, you can't unsee it. Let's set the baseline first, because you need to know the rule before you can appreciate how badly Doom breaks it. Take Milton's Satan. He rebels against God out of pride, loses, and blames chance instead of admitting he was simply outmatched. His arrogance becomes a delusion he keeps feeding. Take Lex Luthor, so convinced humanity doesn't need an alien savior that his arrogance blinds him to the obvious solution. Notice the pattern? In every one of such cases, arrogance is a blind spot. It's the crack in the armor. It's what the hero or the universe exploits. So walking into Dr. Doom, that's exactly what you expect. Genius-level scientist, master sorcerer, self-declared ruler of Latveria, talks about himself in the third person.
For I am Doom.
Surely this guy's ego is a disaster waiting to happen. Except the deeper you go, the more you realize something's off. Doom's ego doesn't get exploited. It gets rewarded. Over and over and over again. In situations that should be unsurvivable, the thing that pulls him through isn't his tech. It isn't even his magic. It's the sheer, stubborn refusal to accept that he could lose. Which raises another question. What if, for this one character, the writers weren't building a flaw at all? What if they built a fictional entity where arrogance isn't a bug, it's the actual operating system? That's what this video is actually about. Let's look at the receipts. In the story Emperor Doom, Victor captures Zebediah Killgrave, the Purple Man, whose mind control is about as close to absolute as Marvel gets. Doom actually amplifies those powers to conquer the planet. But then, in a private confrontation, Doom takes his armor off. No tech, no shield, just him, standing in front of a man whose voice can override anyone's free will. And Killgrave orders him to humiliate himself, commands him to hurt himself. Doom just doesn't. Because obeying another being is so fundamentally incompatible with who he believes he is that his own brain won't process the command. His arrogance functions like a firewall. It's not defending his body, it's defending his identity. And in this universe, that turns out to be enough to beat a power that's supposed to be unbeatable. Sit with that for a second. That's not a workaround. That's willpower doing the job of a superpower. Then there's Secret Wars, 1984. An omnipotent being called the Beyonder literally rips Doom apart on a molecular level. Dissects him. That should be the end. Instead, Doom's consciousness refuses to dissipate. He claws together what the story calls a universal level of intelligence and overpowers a literal god, because some part of him treated dying to a rival as simply not an option. When he stands over the other heroes afterward and declares that he is now the supreme being in the universe, that's not a boast. In universe, it's just accurate. And that's the detail that separates him from every arrogant villain we already talked about. Unlike Milton's Satan, who's just wrong about his own power level, Doom is, and I quote, kind of just correct. His confidence isn't a delusion he's protecting. It's a forecast that keeps coming true. Last one, and it might be the most unsettling. A reality-warping entity called the Marquis of Death, Doom's old teacher, punishes him by turning his blood to acid, his heart to stone, and banishing him to the literal dawn of time. Millions of years. Alone. Most beings, even immortal ones, would break. Doom doesn't. He survives on hatred and patience, quietly mastering dark magic across an unthinkable stretch of time, just so he can eventually humiliate the being who did this to him. He doesn't outmuscle a god, he outlasts one. Because to Doom, time itself is just another obstacle that will eventually bend to his will. Okay, so pattern established. Mind control, cosmic dissection, literal deep time. 3 completely different kinds of unbeatable, and the same trait gets him through all 3. But here's where it gets interesting, because arrogance alone doesn't explain the full picture. It explains how he survives. It doesn't explain how he justifies what he does with that survival. And that brings us to the Panther God. In Doom War, Doom needs Wakanda's vibranium, and to get it, he has to stand before a deity that can look directly into his soul. This is a man who has tortured people, ruled by fear, done genuinely monstrous things. He steps in front of the Panther God completely unbothered. Why? Because he tells it something specific. He's looked at 100,000 possible futures, and in every single one except one, humanity destroys itself. The only timeline where people actually survive is the one where Doom rules absolutely. And the god looks and confirms he's telling the truth, which means his arrogance isn't just self-belief anymore. It's a messiah complex with the receipts to back it up. It's a very different kind of dangerous. But, and this matters, the story doesn't let him off the hook here, because if arrogance is what saves him, it's also what he sacrifices everything else to protect. In the storyline Unthinkable, Doom tracks down Valeria, the one woman who ever genuinely loved him, and lets her believe he wants to leave villainy behind for her. Then, he sacrifices her to a cabal of demons for power, and turns her skin into his armor. It's monstrous specifically because of who she was to him. Because to Doom, nothing, not even love, is allowed to outrank victory. And even at the absolute peak of his power, when he actually stitches a dying multiverse back together and rules it as God Emperor Doom, the story circles back to this exact wound. Reed Richards, his oldest rival, finally asks him the question underneath everything. If you had this power, you think you could have done it better than me, don't you? And Doom says yes, and they both know it's true. That's not a villain getting defeated by a bigger fist. That's a psychological gut punch. Doom saves the universe. He just can't heal it, because healing takes the kind of vulnerability and collaboration that his entire identity is built to reject. Later, talking to his goddaughter, he says he found godhood beneath him. Which, notice what that line is actually doing. He's not admitting failure. Even in defeat, his ego reframes it as a choice. He cannot simply lose. His arrogance won't allow the sentence to end that way. So, here's the uncomfortable twist Dr. Doom hands us. What if the confidence isn't the problem? What if some people's arrogance is actually just an accurate read of what they're capable of? And the real cost isn't that they lose, but what they become in order to never have to. Doom's arrogance isn't his tragic flaw. It's the one thing in his life that's never once failed him. So the next time you catch yourself waiting for the arrogant guy to fall, maybe ask a different question instead. What if he's not wrong? What is that certainty costing him? And what would it cost you?